John Stuart Mill was one of history's greatest thinkers, but at age 20, he was ready to end it all. Nothing made him happy anymore. No achievement brought joy, no success felt meaningful, and his brilliant mind had become his worst enemy. This wasn't just a random bad mood. Mill had spent his entire life training his intellect, learning multiple languages by age 8, mastering advanced philosophy by 12, and becoming a prodigy that everyone admired. Yet all this knowledge led him straight into darkness. Here's what's fascinating. Mill's experience wasn't unique. Some of history's most brilliant minds struggled with deep depression. Take Kurt Gödel, who revolutionized mathematics but became so paranoid, he starved himself to death. Or David Foster Wallace, whose genius-level writing explored depression until he lost his own battle with it. Even today, studies show that people with higher IQs are far more likely to suffer from anxiety and depression. The smarter you are, the more likely you are to be miserable. But Mill discovered something crucial during his depression, something that explained why intelligent people often suffer more. He realized that his powerful analytical mind, the very thing that made him brilliant, was also tearing him apart. Every emotion got dissected. Every joy got analyzed until it lost its magic. His brain wouldn't stop questioning, doubting, and overthinking everything. Sound familiar? It's the same pattern we see in today's overachievers. The straight-A students who can't enjoy their success. The brilliant programmers who can't find happiness despite their six-figure salaries. The deep thinkers trapped in endless cycles of analysis. But here's where it gets interesting. Mill didn't just understand the problem, he found a way out. And his solution wasn't what anyone expected, especially not from one of history's greatest logical thinkers. It wasn't about thinking harder or being smarter. In fact, it was about learning to think less and feel more. This wasn't just some vague self-help advice. Mill developed a specific approach that changed everything for him. And it might just be the key that modern overthinkers are missing. The really wild part? Modern neuroscience is actually backing up what Mill discovered almost 200 years ago. We're finding out that the same brain circuits that make people analytical superstars are the ones that can trap them in depression. But just like Mill, we're also discovering that there are ways to break free if you understand how your brilliant mind works against you. Why should you care about some philosopher's depression from 200 years ago? Because right now, we're seeing a silent crisis among our brightest minds. Silicon Valley, despite its success and innovation, has a serious depression problem. Tech workers making six-figure salaries at dream jobs are burning out at record rates. Universities are reporting massive spikes in depression among their top students. And here's what's really disturbing: the higher the IQ, the higher the risk of mental health issues. This isn't just about feeling sad. We're talking about a deep crisis of meaning that's hitting our smartest people the hardest. Think about it. We're raising generations of brilliant analyzers, critical thinkers, and problem solvers. We teach them to question everything, to think deeply, to push their minds to the limit. But nobody's teaching them how to be happy. Nobody's warning them about the trap that Mill discovered, that the very tools that make you successful can also make you miserable. Mill's journey matters now more than ever because he wasn't just another depressed genius. He figured out why intelligence and depression often go hand in hand. And more importantly, he found a way to break the cycle. His personal writings describe exactly how his mind turned against him, how his incredible analytical abilities became a prison, and how he discovered an escape route that didn't require dumbing himself down. What's really crucial is that Mill's insights weren't just philosophical theories, they were survival strategies. He developed specific ways to use his intelligence without letting it destroy him. And these weren't just quick fixes or positive thinking tricks. He created a complete system for balancing the analytical mind with something else, something that most smart people today are desperately missing. In a world where depression rates are skyrocketing among our most educated populations, where burnout is becoming the norm for high achievers, and where being smart often means being sad, Mill's discoveries could be more valuable than ever. His story isn't just history, it's a blueprint for modern survival. And to understand why his solution works, we need to first understand how he ended up in that dark place, and what exactly he discovered there. At age 8, when most kids were learning basic math, John Stuart Mill was already reading Plato in ancient Greek. His father, James Mill, turned his son's education into an experiment. Young John didn't just study, he was being molded into the perfect thinking machine. By morning, he'd translate complex Latin texts. By afternoon, he'd dive into advanced economics. His father's friends would gather around, amazed as this child debated philosophy like a seasoned professor. But here's the crazy part. Mill never played with toys, never had playmates, never went outside just to have fun. His father believed emotions were a waste of time. Everything had to serve a purpose, had to make the mind sharper. Little John became a walking encyclopedia, but he never learned how to just feel. One of his teachers even wrote that the boy seemed more like a talking book than a child. This intense training worked, sort of. By 20, Mill was brilliant. He could solve complex problems, write groundbreaking essays, and analyze anything you put in front of him. He was exactly what his father wanted him to be, a pure thinking machine. But then something broke. One morning, Mill woke up and couldn't feel anything. Not sadness, not happiness, nothing. His mind was working perfectly, but inside, he felt dead. Think about this, he could still do his work, still think clearly, still function. But if you asked him, "Are you happy?" he couldn't even understand the question. It was like asking a calculator about its feelings. That's when Mill realized something terrifying. He'd been trained to think so well that he'd lost the ability to feel. The breakdown hit hard. Mill started questioning everything. What's the point of being smart if you can't enjoy anything? What good is knowledge if it leaves you empty inside? He'd achieved everything his father wanted, but he felt like a failure at being human. His brilliant mind had become a curse, analyzing every emotion until it disappeared, questioning every joy until it turned to dust. But then something unexpected happened. One day, Mill picked up a book of poetry by Wordsworth. He'd always dismissed poetry as emotional nonsense, but this time, something clicked. Reading about nature, love, and human feelings, Mill started crying. Not from sadness, but because he was finally feeling something real. It was like his emotional circuits, shut down for so long, were slowly coming back online. This wasn't just some quick fix, though. Mill had to completely rebuild how his mind worked. He discovered that his depression wasn't just about being sad. It was about being disconnected from the parts of life that make us human. His father had taught him how to think, but never how to live. And that's what set Mill on a path to discover something crucial: how to be both smart and happy, how to think deeply without losing your soul. Ever notice how the smartest person in the room often seems to be the most miserable? Mill figured out why, and it's not what most people think. The problem isn't that smart people understand more about life's problems. It's that their minds won't shut up. They can't just experience life. They have to analyze it to death. Think about eating your favorite food. Most people just enjoy it. But an overthinker? They're busy analyzing the chemical reactions in their brain, questioning whether they really enjoy it or just think they should enjoy it, wondering if this enjoyment is genuine or conditioned by society. By the time they're done thinking, the food's cold and the joy is gone. This is exactly what happened to Mill, and it's happening to countless smart people today. Here's what makes it worse. Smart people often pride themselves on this endless analysis. They think it makes them special, more aware, more real than others. Mill was the same way. He thought his ability to question everything made him superior, but then he realized something shocking. All this analysis was actually making him experience less of life, not more. It's like watching a movie but spending the whole time analyzing the camera angles. You miss the actual story. Modern research backs this up in a fascinating way. Studies show that people with higher IQs have more active default mode networks in their brains. Basically, their minds are always running in the background, always analyzing. It's like having a computer that never goes into sleep mode. Sounds good, right? Except this constant activity is exactly what drives people crazy. Their minds won't let them rest, won't let them just be. Mill discovered something that today's neuroscientists are just starting to understand. Pure logic isn't enough for human happiness. Look at the tech industry. Some of the smartest people on Earth working on amazing problems. Yet depression rates in Silicon Valley are through the roof. These brilliant minds can solve complex coding problems, but can't figure out how to enjoy a sunny day without turning it into an equation. The real trap isn't intelligence itself. It's relying only on intelligence. Mill realized he'd been trained to use his analytical mind for everything. It's like having a super powerful hammer and treating every problem like a nail. Emotions? Analyze them. Relationships? Analyze them. Joy? Break it down into components and analyze those too. No wonder smart people often feel disconnected. They're trying to logic their way through experiences that logic was never meant to handle. This is why so many intelligent people end up feeling like frauds. They can explain happiness perfectly but can't feel it. They understand love intellectually but can't experience it fully. They know everything about life except how to live it. It's exactly where Mill found himself. A master of understanding but a beginner at living. But here's the hopeful part. Mill didn't solve his problem by becoming less intelligent. Instead, he discovered how to use his intelligence differently. He found a way to balance the thinking mind with something else. Something that most smart people today have forgotten how to use. And that's what we'll explore next. The surprising solution that helped Mill break free from the intellect trap. Imagine you're playing a piano, but you've only ever used the left hand. That's what Mill realized about his mind. The logical, analytical side was super strong, but the emotional, intuitive side had never been developed. His breakthrough? You need both hands to make real music. This wasn't just some feel-good theory. Mill developed a specific way to retrain his brain. Here's what's fascinating. Mill discovered that emotions aren't the opposite of intelligence. They're a different kind of intelligence. When he started reading poetry, he wasn't dumbing himself down. Instead, he was developing what we now call emotional intelligence. Think of it like upgrading from black and white to color vision. You're not seeing less clearly, you're seeing more. Mill's solution was revolutionary for his time, and it's still radical today. He started deliberately exposing himself to art, music, and nature, not to analyze them, but to feel them. He'd look at a sunset and force himself not to think about the physics of light waves. He'd listen to music without breaking down its structure. It felt weird at first, like trying to write with your non-dominant hand. But slowly something incredible happened. He started feeling alive again. But here's where it gets really interesting for today's overthinkers. Mill found that this emotional intelligence actually made his analytical thinking better, not worse. When he learned to balance logic with feeling, his work improved. His writing became more powerful. His ideas got deeper. Modern research shows exactly the same thing. People who combine strong analytical skills with emotional intelligence are more successful than those who rely on pure logic. Look at Steve Jobs. He wasn't just a tech genius. He studied calligraphy, practiced meditation, and emphasized the importance of artistic intuition. He understood what Mill discovered. True innovation comes from combining logic with creativity, analysis with emotion. The most successful companies today aren't just looking for high IQs. They want people who can think and feel deeply. Mill's approach was systematic, which is perfect for analytical minds. He'd set aside specific times for pure experience. No analysis allowed. He'd practice observing his emotions without dissecting them. He learned to recognize when his analytical mind was hijacking an experience and how to gently shift back into feeling mode. It's like developing a new mental muscle. The really powerful part? This balance method works especially well for smart people because it gives their analytical minds a new challenge. Instead of fighting against their tendency to analyze, they learn to channel it productively. It's not about stopping thinking. It's about thinking and feeling in harmony. Think about how different our modern world is from Mill's time. We're bombarded with information, constantly connected, and expected to analyze everything. Yet Mill's solution is more relevant than ever. In fact, some of today's most successful people are secretly using variations of his approach without even knowing it. Take Sundar Pichai, Google's CEO. Despite running one of the most analytical companies on Earth, he regularly practices mindfulness and emphasizes the importance of emotional intelligence. Or look at Ray Dalio, the billionaire investor known for his hyper-logical approach. He openly talks about how meditation and emotional awareness make him a better decision maker. They're all discovering what Mill figured out. You need both sides of your brain to truly succeed. But here's the practical part. How do you actually do this in today's world? Mill's approach can be adapted into specific steps. First, set aside no analysis time each day. It could be 20 minutes where you just experience something without thinking about it. Maybe it's music, maybe it's nature, maybe it's just breathing. The key is not to judge, analyze, or optimize this time. Your analytical mind will hate this at first. That's normal. Second, practice what psychologists now call emotional granularity. Instead of analyzing your feelings, just notice them. Are you stressed? Okay, what kind of stress? Where do you feel it? It's like building a vocabulary for emotions, just like you have for thoughts. This isn't about suppressing your analytical mind. It's about giving it new data to work with. Third, and this is crucial for smart people, use your analytical strengths to build emotional intelligence. Study emotions like you'd study a new programming language. Read research on emotional intelligence. Understand the science behind feelings. Your analytical mind needs to understand why this matters before it will let you develop these softer skills. Here's what's wild. Recent neuroscience studies show that this balanced approach actually changes your brain. People who combine analytical thinking with emotional awareness develop stronger connections between different brain regions. They literally build better neural networks. It's like upgrading your brain's operating system. The most powerful lesson from Mill isn't just about avoiding depression. It's about reaching your full potential. He proved that being smart and being happy aren't mutually exclusive. You don't have to choose between being brilliant and being emotionally alive. In fact, the greatest achievements often come from combining both. Look at the biggest challenges facing us today: climate change, social division, technological disruption. We don't just need smart people to solve these problems. We need emotionally intelligent, balanced thinkers who can see both the logic and the human side of these issues. That's why Mill's discovery might be more important now than ever before. Remember, Mill didn't just survive his depression. He went on to become one of history's most influential thinkers. But he did it by being both analytical and emotional, both logical and intuitive. In today's world of increasing complexity and constant change, that might be exactly the kind of balance we all need to find.